Her mate abandoned her for her twin before the pack, but the Alpha King marked her. The moon hung low over the northern forest, a pale witness to the pack's gathering. Its light spilled over jagged cliffs, through towering pines, and onto the clearing where Celine stood, her heart pounding like a drum in the silence. Tonight was meant to be her night of joy, the moment she would be claimed by her mate before the entire pack. Her twin Lyra stood beside her, flawless and radiant, the perfect picture of confidence. Celine's hands trembled as she adjusted her ceremonial cloak. She tried to steady her breathing, repeating the words her mother had whispered to her as a child. "Strength is quiet, Selene. Let it rise from inside, not from applause." The pack elders, their silver eyes glinting under the moonlight, formed a circle around the clearing. The scent of musk and pine filled the air, mingling with the faint tang of blood from the recent hunts. At the center, a carved stone altar waited. It was ancient, etched with the marks of the Alpha lineage, a symbol of authority, power, and destiny. Celine's mate Caius stepped into the circle. His golden eyes were bright, expectant, and full of something else. Something that made Celine's chest tighten. She tried to smile, but it faltered under the weight of anticipation. "Celine," Caius said, his voice calm, almost reverent, "you are beautiful tonight." Celine's lips curved faintly. "Thank you." Her twin Lyra's smile was sharper, though. It gleamed like a blade in the moonlight, and Selene felt a chill slide down her spine. She ignored it, focusing on the ritual. This was meant to be her moment. The elder lifted his hands. Now the pack witnesses the claiming of the bond. "The Omega shall be joined with her mate before all." Selene's heart surged. She stepped forward, ready to give herself to the one she trusted, the one she loved with everything inside her. But then Caius turned. He stepped away from her, his gaze locking on Lyra instead. The forest seemed to grow colder in that instant. Celine's stomach dropped. "Lyra," Caius said, his voice steady, "I choose you." The world blurred. Gasps echoed through the pack. The elders froze, mouths open in shock. Celine's knees felt weak. The stones beneath her feet seemed to shift and tremble. "What? What are you saying?" Celine's voice cracked, barely audible over the pounding of her heart. Lyra's lips curved in triumph. "You heard him, Selene? He chooses me." Selene felt her chest tighten, a cold, aching weight pressing down. Betrayal, heartbreak, rage. All of it collided inside her at once. Caius, the one she had trusted, had abandoned her for her own twin, before the pack. The pack murmured, whispers weaving like wind through the trees. Some looked at Selene with pity, others with curiosity. But none could understand the storm raging inside her. She stumbled back, unable to speak, unable to breathe. Her world had shattered in a single terrible heartbeat. Before anyone could intervene, a shadow fell across the clearing. The moonlight dimmed as a figure emerged from the forest. Tall, broad, and imposing, he moved with a power that seemed to bend the air around him. His eyes were a piercing silver, like blades of light cutting through the darkness. He was Dorian, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, feared by all who knew his name. The murmurs of the pack rose into startled gasps. No one dared approach the Alpha King lightly, for his presence was law, judgment, and fear all at once. Dorian stopped in the center of the clearing, his gaze falling on Selene. He studied her for a long moment, as if peering into her very soul. The hurt in her eyes, the raw pain, the silent plea for something she didn't even know existed, all of it drew him in. Without a word, he raised a hand. A silver glow emanated from his palm, soft at first, then powerful, surrounding Selene like a protective cloak. "I mark her," Dorian said, his voice deep and commanding. "She belongs to me now." Shock rippled through the pack. The elders frowned. Caius opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. Even Lyra's smile faltered, her confidence shaken. Selene felt the warmth of Dorian's mark settle over her chest, spreading slowly through her body. It was not just a mark of power, it was a connection binding her life to his. She did not understand it fully, yet it filled her with a strange mixture of fear, awe, and safety.
What? What does this mean? Celine whispered, her voice trembling.
It means you are mine, Dorian said, his eyes unwavering. And I will protect you. Do not question the mark, for it is ancient, and it obeys only the Alpha King's will. Celine's mind reeled. This stranger, this legendary Alpha, had taken her fate in his hands at the moment of her deepest despair. Her chest tightened again, but this time not only with heartbreak. It was something new, something that whispered of courage and strength she had never known. Caius stepped forward, his face pale. You can't do this. She was mine to claim. Dorian's eyes narrowed. In an instant, the air between them shimmered, a wave of power that made the forest trees bend and the stones quiver. She was never yours, Dorian said, cold and unwavering, and no one will take her from me. Lyra's laughter was sharp, brittle. You cannot just. Dorian turned, his gaze like steel on Lyra. I can. And I have. The pack watched in stunned silence. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Celine's knees shook, and she sank to the ground. The mark glowed faintly against her skin, pulsing like a heartbeat in tune with her own. She felt the weight of it, heavy yet protective, terrifying yet comforting. Why me? She whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Dorian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, yet not threatening her. Because you are more than you know. You carry strength the world has not seen, and courage that will rise when it is needed most. Tonight, you were abandoned, humiliated, but that pain, it has led you here. To me. Celine wanted to speak, to protest, but no words came. All she could do was look into the silver depths of his eyes and feel, something she could not name. The pack slowly dispersed, murmuring among themselves, leaving Celine and Dorian alone in the clearing. Even Lyra had vanished into the shadows, her victory stolen from her grasp. Dorian extended his hand. Come with me. You need guidance, training, and protection. There is much you do not understand about the world you have been thrown into. Celine hesitated. The pain in her chest was still raw, the betrayal still fresh, but the pull toward this mysterious, powerful Alpha was undeniable. With a trembling hand, she placed her fingers in his. As they walked toward his fortress, the wind picked up, carrying the whispers of the forest. The night was alive with magic, power, and danger, and Celine knew, deep in her heart, that nothing would ever be the same again. Behind her, the pack watched from the shadows, murmuring in fear and awe. Even the elders could not deny the weight of the Alpha King's decision. Celine had been abandoned, humiliated, and broken, but she had been chosen by a force none could challenge. And as the moon dipped behind a cloud, Celine felt the first stirrings of something she had never known: hope. The fortress of the Alpha King rose like a dark mountain in the northern night. Its stone walls were black as obsidian, carved with ancient runes that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Celine walked beside Dorian, her steps echoing on the cold stone floor. Though the hallways were grand and majestic, their shadows seemed alive, shifting like silent sentinels. Celine's heart still ached. She could not forget the cruel betrayal of Caius, nor the triumph in Lyra's eyes. Yet beneath the pain, beneath the fear of the unknown, something else stirred. A quiet curiosity about the Alpha King who had claimed her. Dorian led her to a chamber high in the fortress, where the walls were lined with books, scrolls, and artifacts of ancient power. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room. He gestured for her to sit. Sit, Celine, he said, his voice soft but commanding. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you learn. Celine hesitated, her eyes scanning the room. Every object, every symbol, whispered of centuries of power. And yet, in the presence of this immense strength, she felt safe. Why me? She asked again, almost as if the words would make sense of the impossible. Why choose me when Caius abandoned me? Dorian studied her, his silver eyes unreadable. Because you are not like him, he said finally. You have courage, resilience, and a heart that does not yield to darkness. The bond I gave you is not a punishment or a gift alone. It is a responsibility, and it requires strength. Celine swallowed, unsure what to say. Her chest still ached from betrayal, yet the warmth of the mark on her chest seemed to pulse an answer. She had been abandoned, humiliated, and yet here she was, chosen by someone whose power she could hardly comprehend. Dorian seemed to sense her turmoil. You are angry, he said quietly. You have every right to be. But anger alone will not save you. You must learn to control it, or it will consume you. For the first time since the ritual, Celine felt a flicker of resolve. She had always been gentle, quiet, and overlooked. But perhaps, under Dorian's guidance, she could become more than the girl who had been betrayed. Perhaps she could rise from the shadows of her pain. The following days passed in a blur of training and instruction. Dorian was strict but patient, pushing Celine beyond the limits she thought she possessed. She learned to read the ancient runes that protected the fortress, to sense the movements of the pack, and to feel the presence of danger before it arrived. Yet the emotional weight of her betrayal never left her. Every glance from Dorian, every word he spoke, stirred confusion in her heart. His presence was powerful, yet not overbearing. He commanded with authority, yet offered her choices. And in those quiet moments when the firelight flickered across his sharp features, she caught glimpses of a man who was both fearsome and achingly human. One evening, as snow fell lightly against the fortress windows, Celine ventured onto the balcony. She looked toward the forest, where shadows moved, and whispered of unseen eyes. You are thinking of him? Dorian said, his voice behind her soft as the wind. Celine stiffened. Caius? She asked, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. He nodded, stepping beside her. Yes, and your twin. They have hurt you deeply, but you cannot let them define you. Their choices belong to them, not to you. I don't know if I can forgive them, Celine admitted, her fingers clutching the railing. They took everything from me, my dignity, my trust. Dorian's gaze softened, and for a moment, the harshness of the Alpha King seemed to fade, leaving only a man who understood loss. Forgiveness is not always for them, he said. Sometimes it is for you. To free your heart from poison, to allow yourself to grow stronger. Celine turned to look at him, her eyes searching his. And the bond, the mark, what does it mean for me, for us? The mark is a connection, he said simply. It binds our destinies, but it does not bind your heart. That choice is yours. You are free to trust me, or not. But know this, the world you live in is harsh. Alone you would struggle. With me, you will survive. Her pulse quickened. Survival. Strength. Perhaps even something more, though she dared not name it yet. Days later, the first shadow of danger arrived. A group of rogue lichen hunters, drawn by whispers of Celine's betrayal and the power of the Alpha King, attacked the fortress's outer walls. Their numbers were few, but their intent was clear. Strike fear, test the bond, and weaken Dorian's claim over Celine. Celine watched from the battlements as Dorian moved like a shadow of lightning, his power rippling through the air. The attackers fell one by one, not with cruelty, but with precision and authority. And when he returned to her side, she felt a tremor of awe in her chest. You saw what they feared, Dorian said quietly. They feared you because you are marked, and they feared me because I am the Alpha King. But fear alone will not protect you. You must learn to defend yourself, Celine. I will try, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet inside, a fire sparked, a determination that had been dormant until now. But even as she trained and grew stronger, Celine could not ignore the whispers that lingered in the fortress. Courtiers and guards spoke quietly of Caius's humiliation, of Lyra's plotting, of the Alpha King's strange choice in claiming her. The tension pressed on her chest like a weight she could not lift. One evening, as she wandered through the fortress library, Selene discovered an old scroll tucked away behind rows of dusty tomes. It described ancient bonds, mystical marks that connected two souls, and curses that could be awakened by betrayal and jealousy. She realized that her own marking was more than a claim. It was a shield against the dangers that lurked in both the pack and the shadows beyond. Yet knowledge brought no comfort. Lyra's face haunted her still, smiling with triumph as Caius had stepped away from her. The wound of betrayal ached with every thought. And somewhere deep in the fortress, Selene could sense Dorian watching. Patient, silent, always present. Why does he not push me away? She asked herself quietly one night, staring into the fire. Why does he care for me at all? The answer came in small ways. A hand offered when she faltered in training. A quiet word of encouragement. A presence that seemed to guard her without chains or commands. Dorian was not like Caius. He did not claim her because it was expected. He claimed her because he saw what no one else did. A strength, a heart, and a courage that even she had not yet recognized. But the world outside the fortress did not rest. One night under the silver light of the moon, a message arrived. A scout, breathless and terrified, whispered of Lyra and Caius moving through the northern woods, plotting their revenge. The twins' ambition was no longer hidden, and their actions threatened to bring danger to Selene, and perhaps even to Dorian. Selene felt a cold twist in her stomach. Her past was catching up to her. The betrayal had not ended. It had only evolved into something darker. Dorian's hand on her shoulder startled her. He was calm, unshaken by the news, though his eyes flashed with silent warning. "They will come," he said. "And when they do, you must be ready. Not just with strength, but with your mind, your heart, and your courage. Only then will you survive what is to come." Selene nodded, though fear lingered like a shadow in her chest. She had been abandoned once, humiliated once, left to face despair alone. She would not let it happen again, not to herself, not to the pack. The nights grew colder, the winds harsher. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper filled with threat. And yet, in the quiet moments, Selene found herself drawn to the Alpha King in ways she could not name. His strength was undeniable, but it was his patience, his quiet understanding, his unspoken acknowledgement of her pain that stirred something new within her. A cautious, hesitant hope. She had been betrayed. She had been marked. And now, under the watchful gaze of a man both feared and revered, she began to realize that perhaps this bond, this strange and unexpected connection, was not a prison, but a chance to rise, to grow, and to reclaim the parts of herself that had been shattered by the world. But even as she embraced this fragile hope, the shadow of Lyra and Caius loomed. Their betrayal was not finished, their schemes not complete. The pack's whispers carried fear. The forests themselves seemed to murmur of danger, and the Alpha King's mark pulsed faintly against her chest, a reminder that her fate was no longer her own. Selene's breath caught as she looked out into the night. Somewhere in the dark, unseen eyes watched, plotting, and she knew, deep down, that the trials ahead would test not just her strength, but the courage of her heart. Whatever comes, she would face it. With Dorian or without him, she would not break. But as the wind howled through the fortress towers, a faint, cruel laugh echoed from the shadows. Lyra was coming, and with her, the past that Selene had tried to bury would rise again. The northern winds howled through the fortress towers, carrying the scent of snow, pine, and something darker, something lurking beyond the walls. Selene stood on the highest balcony, the mark of the Alpha King glowing faintly on her chest, her breath clouded in the cold night air, as she stared toward the forest below, where shadows moved like whispers of old fears. Dorian emerged from the hall behind her, silent as a shadow, his silver eyes scanning the horizon. "You are thinking too much," he said softly, his voice blending with the wind. "Focus, Selene. Strength begins with clarity, not worry." Selene's eyes narrowed. "I cannot ignore them," she admitted. "Lyra, Caius, they are planning something. I feel it." Dorian's jaw tightened, and a shadow passed across his face. "They are dangerous," he said. "But danger is not enough to break you. You must learn to act before fear controls you." For days, Celine trained under Dorian's watchful gaze. She learned to move with precision, to anticipate attacks, and to sense the flow of energy around her. The mark on her chest was more than a symbol now. It pulsed in tune with her heartbeat, strengthening her instincts, warning her of unseen threats. But training was not only physical. Dorian tested her mind, teaching her the history of the pack, the power of old magic, and the way bonds could shape destiny. Celine absorbed everything, her determination growing with each lesson. She no longer felt like the abandoned Omega who had cried beneath the blood-red moon. She was becoming something stronger, a woman capable of facing both the world and her past. Yet the shadow of betrayal was never far. Lyra's laughter haunted her dreams, and memories of Caius's golden eyes, filled with desire for her twin instead of her, burned in her chest. Selene clenched her fists as she trained each strike against the practice dummy, a release of the anger, fear, and sorrow she carried. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dorian summoned her to the council chamber. The firelight danced across his sharp features, highlighting the intensity in his eyes. "There is news," he said, his tone grave. "Lyra and Caius are moving faster than we anticipated. They seek the ritual stones in the northern woods, the very stones that could sever the bond I have placed upon you." Celine's breath caught. The ritual stones were ancient, sacred, and powerful. In the wrong hands, they could undo the mark that gave her strength and protection, and in the wrong hands, they could place her life, and perhaps the fate of the pack, in grave danger. "They think they can take you back," Dorian said, his eyes hard. "They think they can undo what is mine to guard. But you are stronger than they know. You have learned. You have grown. And tonight, we will test both your courage and your wisdom." Celine nodded, determination blazing in her chest. Fear lingered like a shadow, but it no longer controlled her. She would not allow herself to be a victim again. Dorian led her to the northern forest, where the moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy of ancient trees. The ritual stones glimmered faintly in the darkness, arranged in a circle, pulsing with latent magic. Selena felt a shiver run down her spine. "They will come soon," Dorian said. "You must decide. Will you fight with me, or will you face them alone?" "I fight with you," Selene said, her voice steady.
Always. A faint smile crossed Dorian's lips, though his eyes remained vigilant. "Good."
"Remember, strength is not only in the body, it is in the mind, in the heart, and in the choices you make." The first attack came as a whisper of wind. Shadows darted between the trees and Selene's instincts flared. She moved forward, guided by the mark on her chest, sensing the energy of approaching danger before her eyes could see it. Lyra emerged from the darkness, her cloak flowing like liquid shadow. Her eyes gleamed with malice, and beside her, Caius advanced, guilt and desperation both visible in his expression. "You think you can stand against us?" Lyra hissed, her voice cold and sharp. "The pack will see you humiliated again. You are nothing without him." Celine's heart pounded, but she did not falter. "I am not nothing," she said, her voice clear. "And he is not yours to command." Dorian stepped beside her, his presence like a wall of steel. Together, they faced the twins, their combined power radiating through the clearing. The air hummed with tension, magic, and the silent promise of battle. Lyra moved first, weaving a spell meant to disorient Selene, a trap to sever the Alpha's mark. Selene felt the energy strike her like a wave, but instinctively she responded, focusing on the pulse of the bond. A shield of silver light flared around her, repelling the attack. "You are stronger than I imagined," Lyra spat, fury cracking her calm facade. "But it is not enough. Caius now." Caius hesitated, torn between loyalty and love, between ambition and guilt. For a moment, Selene saw the hesitation in his eyes, the conflict that mirrored her own past hurt. But Lyra's influence was strong, and he surged forward, attempting to grab the ritual stones. Selene moved faster than she knew she could. Guided by the mark, By courage, by the growing strength within her, she intercepted him. Their eyes met. Golden eyes and brown, shadowed by fear and regret. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "You can choose the right path." Caius faltered. In that instant, Dorian moved, his power wrapping around Celine like a protective storm. Together, they forced Lyra and Caius back, using not cruelty, but precision and control. The forest echoed with the sound of the struggle, yet neither Celine nor Dorian wavered. Lyra, realizing the tide had turned, raised her hands for one final attack, a desperate spell aimed at breaking Celine's concentration. But Selene, breathing deeply, focused entirely on the mark. The silver light expanded, forming a shield that absorbed the energy of Lyra's spell, sending it harmlessly into the sky. Lyra's scream echoed through the forest, a sound of rage and defeat. "This isn't over," she shouted, retreating into the shadows with Caius at her side. Selene sank to her knees, chest heaving, tears pricking her eyes. The battle was won, but the victory was bittersweet. The twins' betrayal had not ended. It had only escalated, and the danger they carried was far from gone. Dorian knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said, his voice low and steady. "Do you understand now? Strength is not just physical. It is courage, wisdom, and the choice to rise even when everything seems against you." Selene looked up at him, her chest still aching, her heart still raw. I think I understand," she whispered. "But I don't know if I can forgive them yet." "Forgiveness is not always for them," Dorian reminded her. "It is for you, to free your heart from the chains of anger and pain. But you are allowed to feel all that you feel. And when you are ready, that choice will come naturally." The bond between them pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat in unison. Selene realized that it was more than power. It was connection, guidance, and protection. And in that connection, she felt something she had not known before. The first stirrings of trust, and perhaps even something deeper, though she dared not name it. The night air was still, the forest quiet once more. But Selene knew the struggle was far from over. Lyra and Caius were out there, plotting, waiting, seeking a way to undo what had been done. And the mark on her chest, while a shield, was also a signal, a beacon to those who would seek to harm her. Dorian stood, his eyes scanning the forest, and then he looked at her. "You are ready," he said softly. "Not for them, not for the battle that comes, but for yourself, for who you are meant to become." Selene straightened, the fire of determination burning in her chest. She had been abandoned. She had been betrayed. But she had also been chosen, and with Dorian she would rise. But as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest echo of cruel laughter, Selene shivered. The past had not released her. Lyra's plans were not finished, and Caius's heart still teetered between ambition and remorse. Selene touched the mark on her chest, feeling its warmth and strength. "Whatever comes, I will face it," she whispered. "Not as a victim, but as someone who will not be broken again." And from the shadows beyond the forest, eyes watched, waiting, plotting, and whispering of vengeance yet to come. The northern winds howled like a chorus of forgotten voices, sweeping across the high cliffs where the fortress of the Alpha King rose like a black monolith against the moonlit sky. Inside, Selene paced the grand hall, the mark on her chest glowing faintly in the dim torchlight. Her heart thudded not with fear, but with a steady, resolute determination. The events of the past days had changed her. She was no longer the abandoned Omega, trembling beneath the weight of betrayal. She had trained under Dorian's watchful eye, faced the schemes of her twin and her false mate, and survived. Each trial had strengthened her body, sharpened her mind, and steadied her heart. Yet even in this newfound strength, she knew the final confrontation was near. Lyra and Caius would not stop until they had attempted to destroy everything. The bond, the pack, and perhaps even Selene herself. Dorian entered the hall, silent as a shadow. His silver eyes, reflecting the flickering flames, were steady and unwavering. He approached her and knelt, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. "They will come," he said simply. Tonight is the night you face not just them, but all the fear, all the pain you have carried. Remember, you are stronger than you know." Selene looked into his eyes, seeing not just power, but trust and an unspoken belief in her courage. She nodded, feeling the strength of the bond pulse beneath her fingers. "I am ready," she whispered, "for them and for myself." The moon had reached its zenith when the shadows moved. Lyra and Caius emerged from the tree line, cloaked in dark intent, their expressions hard, their eyes blazing with ambition and jealousy. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every tree a silent witness to the confrontation about to unfold. "You think you can hide behind him?" Lyra spat, her voice sharp as the northern wind. "The pack will see the truth soon enough. You are nothing without your Alpha King." Selene stepped forward, her body steady, her gaze unflinching. "I am not nothing," she said firmly. "I am stronger than you believe. And tonight, you will see that the bonds we choose, the courage we carry, and the hearts we protect are more powerful than betrayal." Caius hesitated, caught between the twins' influence and the guilt he had carried in the wake of his betrayal. Selene's words seemed to reach him, a flicker of the boy she once loved lingering beneath the shadow of his mistakes. But Lyra's anger was fierce, and she would not allow weakness to interfere. The first strike came swiftly. Lyra moved with magic, weaving a spell designed to sever Selene's mark, to shatter the connection that had become her strength. Selene felt the energy hit her like a wave, yet instinctively she responded. The mark flared, pulsing with protective energy shielding her from harm. Dorian moved beside her, a wall of calm and power. Together they faced the twin and her misguided ally. The clash of energy rippled through the forest, sending sparks into the air and shaking the ground beneath their feet. Selene realized in that moment that the strength of the bond was not only in the magic itself, but in the trust between them. Dorian's presence steadied her, and the mark guided her, amplifying the courage she had built over these days. Lyra, frustrated by their defense, lashed out with fury, aiming for Selene's heart. But Selene had grown sharper, faster, and wiser. She sidestepped, drawing upon the energy of the bond and channeling it through her hands. A pulse of silver light struck Lyra, knocking her back without lasting harm, yet enough to break her focus. Caius, watching this display, faltered. He looked at Selene, the girl he had abandoned, and for the first time, truly saw her. She was no longer the girl who had cried beneath the blood-red moon. She was a warrior, a protector, a woman forged through betrayal, pain, and determination. "Selene," he whispered, his voice torn. "You chose your path," Selene said firmly, her gaze steady on him. "And now you must live with it. I do not seek vengeance. I only seek to protect what is mine, and what is just." Lyra, enraged, raised her hands for a final strike, aiming for the ritual stones themselves, trying to destroy their power and sever the bond. Selene's heart raced. The stones glimmered faintly, their magic vulnerable to corruption. "Dorian," she called. "We cannot let her destroy the stones." Dorian nodded, his eyes sharp. Together they moved in perfect synchronization, Selene guiding the protective energy through the mark, Dorian amplifying it with his power. A dome of silver light enveloped the ritual stones, repelling Lyra's destructive spell. The twins screamed, a sound of rage and desperation. Caius, seeing the futility of their plans, stepped back, torn between allegiance and fear. Selene lowered her hands, the dome of light still shimmering. "This ends tonight," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "No more lies, no more betrayal." Lyra fell to her knees, her power drained and her pride shattered. You cannot defeat me," she spat, but the words carried no conviction. Selene looked at her twin, the girl who had haunted her life, and for the first time, felt a sense of pity rather than fear or anger. "I am not your enemy," Selene said softly. "Your choices have made you so, but I will not be broken by you. And I will not destroy you. That is not my way." Caius, ashamed, bowed his head. I was wrong, he said quietly. I let ambition blind me. I see now what I have lost. Selene felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. The battle was over, but the lessons remained. She had faced betrayal, danger, and fear, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. Dorian stepped closer, his presence steady and reassuring. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his silver eyes softening. You have proven yourself tonight, he said, not only in strength, but in heart. Courage is not the absence of fear, Selene, but the choice to act despite it. And you have chosen well. Selene looked up at him, the flickering firelight reflecting in her eyes. For the first time, she felt the bond not as a chain, but as a connection, a partnership, a trust, a path forward. The forest was quiet, the shadows still, and the ritual stones glimmered faintly, their power intact. Selene knew that the world would always hold challenges, but she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had Dorian, the Alpha King, at her side. She had the strength within herself, and she had survived the betrayals that once seemed insurmountable. In the days that followed, Selene's presence in the pack transformed the hearts of those around her. The elders saw her courage and wisdom, the younger members admired her strength, and even Caius, humbled and remorseful, began to understand the true meaning of loyalty and honor. Selene's relationship with Dorian deepened, not through words alone, but through trust, guidance, and quiet moments of understanding. They trained together, strategized together, and shared the weight of responsibility. Each day Selene felt herself growing, not just as the Alpha King's mate, but as her own person, strong, capable, and worthy. Yet even in this peace, the mark on her chest remained a reminder of what had been overcome, and what must always be guarded. The shadows of the past would never fully disappear, but Selene had learned to face them without fear. One evening, as the northern sun set behind the mountains, casting the fortress in a golden glow, Selene stood beside Dorian on the balcony. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of pine and snow. "We have survived," she said softly, her hand resting on the mark. "We have endured, and we have grown." Dorian nodded, his eyes reflecting the sunset.
And yet the world is wide, Selene.
There will always be challenges, dangers, and choices. But whatever comes, we face it together. Selene turned to him, her heart steady, her spirit strong. "Together," she repeated. The forest below whispered with the secrets of the night. The pack slept, safe under the watch of their Alpha King and the woman who had once been abandoned. Lyra and Caius were gone from the immediate shadows, but their presence lingered in memory, a reminder of trials overcome. Selene felt no hatred, only clarity and strength. Javen Ghislaine Neus was not in magic, not in titles and not in revenge, but in courage, wisdom, and the choice to rise above darkness. The mark glowed faintly, a heartbeat of connection between her and Dorian, a symbol of protection, trust, and destiny. Selene pressed her hand to it, feeling the pulse of energy that had guided her through betrayal, danger, and despair. She smiled faintly, knowing that she was no longer the girl who had been abandoned at the ritual. She was Selene, strong, unbroken, and ready to face whatever the world could throw at her. And somewhere in the distant forest, a shadow moved, watching, silent, but no longer threatening. The past had tested her, but Selene had emerged, not just alive, but transformed. The Alpha King placed his hand over hers, the warmth of his presence steady and unwavering. "The night is ours," he said softly. Selene nodded, her heart full of quiet pride and cautious hope. "Yes," she said, "the night, and all the days to come." The wind swept across the fortress, carrying the whispers of the forest, the echoes of trials faced, and the promise of a future forged in courage, love, and trust. Selene and Dorian stood together on the balcony, two hearts bound by choice, courage, and destiny, ready to face the unknown as partners, protectors, and something more. And in the quiet glow of the moon, the northern forest seemed at peace, if only for a moment, under the watch of the Alpha King and the woman he had chosen, and who had chosen herself in return.